Yes, we are live.
I'll start.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Up first, we have Kuhu Singh, who is an incoming postgraduate PGP student at IIM Bangalore. Yeah, if you could just share your experience and the process about how you went about this.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Kuhu. I graduated this year, uh, and my major is in mechanical. And I'm joining IMB as a PGP student and as a fresher. Can we move on to the next slide? Okay. Basically, the first thing you have to decide is if you want to, which college do you want to go to? So, all the major IIMs and a lot of other institutes accept CAT. If you want to go to ISB, they only accept GMAT. And a lot of other colleges have their own tests, like XLRI, Jamshedpur, the college there. And so, there are a lot of various exams, but I did not give them. So, I'll talk about CAT. So the pattern for CAT is that it's a 2-hour paper with 3 sections, and each section is given 40 minutes. So within the 40 minutes, you have to complete that section. You cannot roll over the time to the next section. Suppose you finish English first, you cannot use that time for DILR or quant. Okay, so it is in that order. First you solve VRC, then you solve DILR, and then you solve quant. The major part is in CAT exam is you have to learn to manage your time properly. For a few years, the pattern has been that there are 66 questions, uh, 20 questions, 22 questions in VARC, 20 questions in DILR, and 24 questions in quant. Yeah, something like this. So the major part is that you have to manage time and you have to get the accuracy correct. You do not have to solve all the questions to get the best percentile. If you get minimum 50% marks, you solve 50% of the questions correctly, effectively, with negative marking, everything included, 50% of the marks if you have, then you will be somewhere around 99 percentile. Okay, so focus on getting the accuracy rather than trying to solve all the problems. Okay, preparation. Ideally, it would take 5 to 6 months. Since you are in college right now, I think, and final year, you will have enough time to give. Okay, so I would suggest that you start by giving a couple of mock papers. Then you will know which section is your weak section. Either your English might require a little effort, or DLR might require a little effort, or you might have forgotten some of the math, concepts and formulas that you can revise. Okay, so start that and keep that as like your zeroth reference, that this is how much I performed, in the first few tests that I gave. Always track your progress. Keep writing, okay, what went wrong in this paper, how much did I score in this paper, what percentile did I score in this paper. If you take online mock tests, then they will tell you the percentile as well based on the number of people that are participating in that test. So take mock tests regularly. Here, like, it's the beginning, you still have 5 to 6 months left. It's in the end of November, the exam. So you have around 5 months. So maybe like every 10 days or 15 days, you take a mock test. And then as the exam gets closer, increase the frequency of the tests. Give it every week and then like every 3 days. Take sectional tests. You will know in each section which topic is your strong point and which topic is your weak point. Okay, and this time what happened is that they gave a new pattern question in VARC, which I attempted and I got both of them wrong. So do not attempt any new pattern of questions that you have already not practiced. If you are very, very sure of the answer, only then attempt those questions. Otherwise, it's very safe to leave the questions. You have other questions that you can solve, because as long as you know the pattern, as long as you know the type of questions you have practiced, you will be well and good. And be consistent in your preparation. You cannot be like, okay, you know what, one day I'm going to study 10 hours and then I'm not going to study any other day. Even if you're studying a couple of hours every day, that is better than doing, one day everything and then not doing anything for a couple of days. Okay, so this is about the pattern and preparation. I'll tell you about the individual sections. So VARC is verbal ability and reading comprehension. There are 4 paragraphs. somewhere around 500, 600 word paragraphs. So they are not very short paragraphs. They are long enough to give you, context, reference, everything. So you need to have a reading habit. Read at least one article every day, and not just like, skim it. Go through it, understand what the topic is trying to say. And once you start solving questions, you will realize that there are certain type of paragraphs that they choose to you know give. They can be psychology based paragraphs, economics based paragraphs, some are technology, some are like general nature science. You'll see, and they get repeated. It's not like they're going to give all psychology or physiology questions. All four of the paragraphs are going to be like that. One paragraph is going to be relatively easier, one paragraph is going to be relatively harder. So you have to look for the paragraph that you want to solve, look for the topics that you are good at, look for the type of questions that you're good at. So every paragraph has 4 questions, so that makes up the 16 questions. And the remaining questions are jumbled sentences. Be given 4 or 5 sentences that you have to arrange in the order that makes the most sense. So this you have to type. This is not an option based question. So option based question do not have negative marking, otherwise there is +3 -1. So again, as I said, understand the type of passages that come and the pattern of questions that are asked. What I found most helpful was, once you read the question, go through all the options and you try to match which option best is found in the paragraph. Sometimes you will find the exact sentence in the paragraph, but it does not answer the question. Sometimes you may have predefined biases that, okay, you know what, just because they said this, they must also mean this, but it is not specified in the paragraph. So unless and until it is specified in the paragraph, do not assume anything else. If you can verify each and every word that is in the option from the given paragraph, then it is the right answer. Otherwise, it is not the right answer. So you have to solve as many questions as possible in verbal ability and reading comprehension to understand the type of questions that come and where exactly you're making a mistake. Even if you think that a certain option is correct and it turns out to be correct, but it was correct for the wrong reason that you thought, still mark as incorrect because you did not think of the right logic. It was a fluke and you did not get the answer right. So then next section is DILR, which is data interpretation and logical reasoning. Again, there are certain type of questions that come. There are relational questions, there are graph based questions, the Einstein type questions, if you know what I mean. Like, some points are given and then you have to connect what each of it means and then solve that question. So you will see the pattern repeats. You can do all type of questions, and it is better to, like, again, select which questions you're good at solving. You do not need to solve all the questions, because you have 40 minutes. Maybe try to solve just 50%. There are 4 to 5 uh, questions that are given. Based on it, there are like 4 to 5 like paras that are given, the clues, the main question, and then sub questions are like 4 to 5 in each of them, 4 to 6 in each of them. So if you solve that para, like if you solve all the clues, then you can solve all the questions in that. Okay, so make sure you take your time, take 10 minutes, 12 minutes to solve that, and then you can get all the questions correct. Because if you get even one thing wrong in interpreting that problem, all 6 questions are wrong. So do not be in a hurry. Maximum you can solve 3. It is almost impossible to solve all 4 of the paragraphs that are given. If you do, well and good, that's amazing, but usually a lot of people cannot. Okay, and even if you solve 3 of them correctly, you'll mostly get like 99.9 or 100 percentile. So 2 to 3, solve all of them, number of questions, see what questions you are on, and do not ever try to solve it mentally. It is not possible. Write every clue, try to relate to every clue, and try to figure out where to start the questions. There are a lot of clues given. So which clue is going to be the best starting point? You have to learn. You have to solve enough questions to figure out where to start. Okay. Uh, I'm sorry, this is a typo. This is not GRE. This is quant. It's supposed to be quant. So quant may, it's just high school math. What we learned in 11th and 12th. Basics of it. There's everything. There's algebra. There's logarithms. There's calculus. they ask all sort of questions, but the level of questions is not like JEE level of questions, not very difficult. But again, it's a time crunch. You have to solve 24 questions in 40 minutes. So you have to go for accuracy rather than the number of questions that you solve. The maximum number of questions come from number system and algebra. So if you solve this, if you know both of them, more than 50% of your paper will already be solved. Rest of it is geometry, sometimes a bit of calculus, trigonometry, and all of that. But these two have the major weightage. So their favorite questions to ask are around like uh, time, money, relations, something like that. You'll see the type of questions that come. Revise the basic concepts of math and then start solving questions, because all of you are from the engineering background, I am assuming. So you already have studied the basic concepts, and I got very bored when I started try to sit with the basics of it again, trying to understand what functions are, because you already know what they are. So you might lose interest in that. So go to start solving questions, and if you have forgotten a topic, then go back to that topic and revise that topic. Okay. And if you understand the topic and you've forgotten the formula, go back and revise the formula. Only way to go about it is, again, solve as many questions as possible. If you think that this question is taking too long, skip that question, go to the next question. There are enough questions to solve, because you don't have to solve all the questions. Okay. So this is for the preparation of CAT. Then once you get the profile, so as an engineer, as a general engineer male with no work experience, you will need to score very, very high percentile, 99.7, 99.8, to get calls from the top ABC colleges. Okay. If your category, it is slightly less, because they try to value, they try to include that, they try to diversify. Women also have slightly lesser, people who are from arts commerce background also have slightly lesser cutoff, not very less, but yes, general engineer male have to have the highest cutoff. So my profile was 997, so 10th, 12th, college, undergrad. Okay. So all those marks are taken into the composite score to call you for an interview. I had calls from, I'm Bangalore, I'm Calcutta, Kozhikode, and Indore. And because of some college exams and stuff, I could not go for Kozhikode and Indore. I only went for Calcutta and Bangalore, and I converted to Calcutta and Bangalore. So you might be thinking, like, why do you want to do MBA? That is completely your choice. If you want to do it as a fresher, or do you want to do it as, come back with a work experience and see what you can do. Firstly, like, I'm a mechanical engineer, not very interested in core. I was placed as an analyst, which is fairly interesting. But I also wanted to be in management. That's why MBA seemed like a right option. Uh, Also, because I got IIM Bangalore. If I would not have gotten it, I would have continued with my job, and then I would have given the CAT again. Then you get better jobs in the future. Of course, like if you get into the top IIMs, the placement, the median salaries, everything is amazing. So you do not have to worry about that. And preparing while working is harder. You will be working like a 9 or 10 hour shift, and then after that you have to start working on something else. You'll lose the track of how to study, and then once you start getting money and once you have all that freedom, it's slightly harder to pay attention to studying for CAT unless you're very, very determined about it. So these were my reasons. You can choose why you want to do MBA on your own. So once you get calls from various colleges, they will tell you will get the calls around January or starting of February, and the interviews start from February and go on till April. So you will get a date, and you will get a time slot where you have to go, when you have to go, everything. And most of the applications, you have to individually go to their website. Once they tell you that you're shortlisted, you have to go to their website and apply for each college. So general questions are always there. Why do you want to be here? What are your strengths, weaknesses? Upload your resume and everything. But Bangalore specifically asks you to submit an SOP and LOR, which is not required for the other colleges that I applied to. They will ask you to write about yourself, write a short SOP in 500 words or something, separately on their application itself, but they don't ask you to submit something, extra. You have to fill the form, you have to write all the details, but not as something called, like, not as separately as Bangalore wants it. So statement of purpose is very, very important for IIM Bangalore. My interview was solely based on the statement of purpose that I wrote. It is very likely that your interview will also be based on the statement of purpose that you write. So include all the topics that you're very thorough with. Start. It depends on where you start. Start with an introduction, why you want to do this. Then you list, like, all the work that you have done, how did you impact that work, rather than just listing, okay, I did an internship in so and so company. Fine, you have to write that, but you also explain, like, what did you do there. Okay, this happened, so it impacted that. I automated this much, saved this much time, whatever, you that sort of things. Do not make grammatical errors. Seek out help from your seniors. Most colleges give you a mentor or a buddy from their own college to help you through the process. So you can review with them, you can talk to them, and they will tell you what to do. Please do not share childhood stories, do not write cliche quotes, do not be very informal about it. They want to know you in the SOP, but they don't want random information in there either. Be very clear about why you want to do this program, and once you're starting, don't jump from one point to the other. Make smooth transitions. This happened and then that happened, why that happened, one after the other. Then one thing very specific to IIM Bangalore again was they need two letters of recommendation. It can be professors or any manager at your workplace, wherever you do, if you worked there or if you have an internship. The professors have to fill a questionnaire that is sent to them, which asks your strengths, weaknesses, what are your interests, general hobbies, whatever, whatever. So if you do not have a prof that knows you very well, go talk to them, tell them about yourself, tell them why you're here, so that they know what to write in there. Uh, that's it. They can the interest that the professor fills or the person that you're referring to fills can also be used as starting point to questions, that okay, this person has written this, can you explain why, something like that. So this is beforehand. Then when your interview date comes, you have to give a writing ability test. It has 10% weightage to your composite score. So in the end, it's not just about your CAT score. CAT score is usually just 20 to 25% of the whole composite score. Interviews has a lot. Firstly, the composite score breakage depends on the college, what component they want to add. It's totally dependent on them. They will tell you what is the mark breakup of for their college. For writing ability is usually 10%. So, and some colleges, I think Indore does not have writing ability, and the other new IMs also do not have writing ability, but BMC do. So you're giving 30 minutes to write 200 to 500 words on a given topic. The topic usually range from recent news, general phenomena, some finance business concept, your opinions on it, something like that. So 30 minutes does not seem like a lot of time, but again, jot down your points before writing. Which points do you want to include? How will you justify them? Give an example about it. Be very clear and articulate about it. It is not about how much you know, it is more about how well can you explain. Okay, again, once you start writing, you realize 200 and 500 words is not that much. If you start, if you get into a flow and you know about the topic, it is not enough words to fit every information. So choose the information you want to put and the best way to put it. That does not mean that you write irrelevant points and you think that only the way I say it is going to matter. Content matters, but the articulation matters more. And once you're done, if you have save some time, 2 to 3 minutes, to go through it again to review for any grammatical errors or any changes that you might want to make. Okay, then there is personal interview. So again, personal interview is based mostly on your SOP or the interests that you filled, the work experience that you filled in the application form. They can ask you your undergrad concepts because they it depends on the panel. Everything is dependent on the panel, whatever they want to ask. But if it's core subjects, they know a lot about core. If they want to ask, uh, they will ask about your work experience. Just don't think that okay, there are three people, how much will they know about a certain topic. They know a lot. If they want to ask you something, they will get to the bottom of it. So whatever it is, just revise your concepts and go. Okay, usually they ask you which topic is your favorite in your undergrad course, so you can pick those topics and prepare those topics. Know everything about the work and internships that you have done and mention in the SOP and resume. Okay, do not take someone else's work experience. Do not say that, okay, can I borrow this project from you, because you will have no idea how that affected anything. Okay, do be very honest about the work you have done and know everything about the work that you have done. Be aware of the general business finance news around the time when the interviews happen. Usually the union budget comes, so there are a lot of questions on the budget. If you have time right now, try to read the budget for this year as well, and you can compare, tell them for, and you can relate it to a number of topics because the budget covers everything. If you mention that you're interested in a specific project, say that you're interested in consultancy or finance or something, then know the concepts, know the basic concepts. Don't just say that you like finance because you want to get into finance. Say that you like finance and then know the topics as well. Okay, prepare the normal general questions like your introduction, why do you want to do an MBA, why do you want to switch, why join as a fresher, why are you the right fit. The general questions that might be asked for everyone. You should have like you should write your answers, revise your answers, and tell them exactly what you want to say. There's no scope of error in this, because everyone usually gives similar answers. You cannot just sit there and think, why do I want to do this? You should already know why you want to do this. Okay, Bangalore and Calcutta usually don't do it, but this time Kozhikode did a lot of pressure interviews, as I heard from other people. I did not go for the interview, so it can be like they might say something that is like, okay, we don't want to hear this. They might cut you off. So it's just a test that you're patient and you can think well under pressure. It has nothing to do with the things you're saying. It can and it cannot happen to you. Again, I am telling you an anecdotal incident from the people that I know who have given the interviews. Might not be exactly how it is. And never ever bluff your answers. If they ask you a question and you do not know the answer, say, I'm very sorry, sir, I do not know about this topic. Do not make up an answer right then and there. If you know partially, you can say that this is what I know, but I am not sure how this happens later. Okay, do not bluff answers. They know when you're bluffing. That is worse than saying that, you know, if you bluff an answer, that's worse than not answering. So do not answer if you do not know it. Okay, that is it from my side. If you have any questions, I can take it. We have, I think, a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, so I think there was one question in the chat. Uh, in what, like, can we take up the paper in like any order? Uh, VRC,
You, no, you
one.
cannot take up the paper in any order. It is VARC, DILR, and quant. You have to solve in this order.
That's it, I guess. No more questions. So we'll move on to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Kuhu. Up next, we have with us Rohan Sunil, who's going to pursue the Master in Management program at ESSEC Business School in France.
So, hello everyone. So, as introduced, my name is Rohan. I'm going to join the ground equal Master in Management program at ESSEC Business School in Cergy, France. Yeah, so through this session, I basically wanted to give you all an idea on what the MIM is because it's fairly new for most, it might be fairly new to most of you. I'll give you a brief idea on what the MIM is, my profile, my journey, and basically why did I choose ESSEC Business School in the end. Yeah. So first, what is the MIM? No, you can stay on that second. So what is the MIM? So the MIM is basically a management course for freshers or people with very little or no work experience. So for example, I'm going to go in with no work experience. Yeah, so the MIM was the course I chose. So the MBA, on the other hand, is especially when you're doing it abroad, you're going to have at least 3 to 4 years of work experience. So, for freshers who want to move abroad, the MIM is the ideal option for them. So the curriculum, a lot of a lot of times I've heard that the MIM program is extremely theoretical compared to the MBA, whereas the MBA is more practical when it comes to it. This is something I generally do not agree with because it's a very broad statement to make. The MIM, for example, depends on the institute you choose, and the curriculum varies. There's no fixed curriculum for the MIM, and even the course itself is called differently based on the colleges you apply to. There's master in management, master in international management, etc. So personally, I feel that the MIM is not a very theoretical program. For example, if you see colleges like INSEAD, HEC Paris, ESSEC, ESCP, the course, each and every subject that you take up, be the core subject or the electives, have some practicality to it in terms of involving case studies, practical solutions, real world solutions, and getting people from the industry to take the courses. And there's also things like chairs and tracks where you actually get the opportunity to work with companies as well. I'll be explaining the chairs and tracks in detail when I go to essay. But yeah, so I do not, the MIM is not very theoretical, but it is much more theoretical compared to the MBA because you're teaching freshers or people with no work experience, right? So you have to help them get that foundation in the field of management first. So you need that foundation in various subjects before you go into specializations. So that is why it's theoretical, but it's not theoretical in terms of there's no practical exposure at all. Next is the route. So the MIM is basically more European compared to the MBA. The MBA is uh, more famous in the US, but the MIM has more European roots. There are MIM programs in the US as well, but they are fairly new. And whereas the MIM in ESSEC, INSEAD, HEC are fairly well established, fairly old courses, and they have experience in training students in this course. The job prospects. So basically, it's pretty obvious that after the MIM, you'll be entering into entry level roles, whereas after the MBA, you'll be getting into senior level roles. But the job prospects are good for the MIM as well. And I'll be going into detail when I talk about ESSEC. Next, why did I choose to do the MIM and not the MBA? So, so it basically boils down to no, you can stick to the previous slide now. So it basically boils down to personal preference. So the MIM and the MBA cater to two totally different audiences. Okay, and I'm just talking about MIM versus MBA abroad. So according to me personally, I felt that I wanted that continuity in my studies before I enter the corporate world. I wanted that opportunity to explore the various domains, like finance, marketing, strategy, consulting, sustainability. Even though I have kind of an idea on which field I want to pursue, I still wanted that opportunity to study these fields in greater depth before I choose my program. And I also felt that, if you want to do an MBA, you have to have 3 to 4 years of work experience, and that has a few disadvantages to it. For example, you'll have to do the application process as well as the GMAT while working, which I feel is extremely difficult. And I'll be explaining the processes in detail, and you'll understand why it's extremely difficult to manage your workload as well as the applications and the GMAT. Yeah, so these are some of the reasons why I chose to do the MIM. And my profile basically, I've just completed my BTech in chemical engineering and I've graduated in 2023. I applied in my sixth semester with a CGPA of 8.36. Um, my clubs I was part of IST and ITK. I was the head of Catalyst. Was part of 180DC and ITK, was the convener there. And yeah, there are other positions that I took up, like the internship coordinator as well. And I was also part of and was the campus director for the UN Millennium Fellowship as well. Internships. So I basically had 3 corporate internships, no research internships, all in startups to mid-sized companies, and all in the field of management, fields like project, product, as well as operations and supply chain. So that's about the internships. And finally, my GMAT. I'll be explaining my GMAT in detail, but I basically scored a 720 on the GMAT. Now, the colleges I applied to are listed on the screen. That's INSEAD, HEC Paris, ESSEC, and ESAD. So the first 3 are in France, and ESAD is in Spain. I got rejects from INSEAD and HEC Paris, and I got accepts from the other 2. Yep, move on, please. Yeah, so now I'll give a brief about my MIM journey. So how did it start off and how did it end? So first is the GMAT. I'll try to be as I'll try to condense it as much as possible because I can have a whole session on how you can go about the GMAT. But basically, the GMAT is an adaptive test. So that is one of the first things you have to know about the GMAT. So the every question you get will be based on how you answer the previous question. So if you're able to answer an easy question, you get a more difficult question next. if you're if you get a very easy question wrong, you're going to get a very very easy question. And if you get the so that means if you get the very easy questions wrong, your score is going to drop by a lot. So there are three different sections when it comes, four different sections when it comes to the GMAT. The two main ones are quant and verbal, and there's AWA and IR, that is integrated reasoning and essay writing, basically. So first, let me talk about the two main sections, that is quant and verbal. So when it comes to quant, right, since most of us are from an engineering background, I assume, quant is going to be a strong point for us. It's not going to be JE level. It's going to be up to 12, whatever you learned. But there are a few topics which most of us might be weak at, like, number systems and things like that. So there are a few topics that you'll have to go through, but you'll be fairly confident while answering quant, which makes it all the more easier for you to make very silly mistakes because you are extremely confident in the answers and you want to tick and go to the next question. So while giving the exam, you have to ensure that there are no silly mistakes because, as I mentioned, you cannot get easy questions wrong. That is going to drop your score by a huge level. So what I'd suggest is when you're doing your GMAT prep, set aside time every day to just practice questions from quant so that you're getting into that rhythm before you give the exam. Yeah, there's not much to say about quant. You'll be familiar with most of the topics, but you have to just ensure that you're not getting uh, the easy questions wrong. You can leave out the difficult questions. You will, as you progress, right, you're going to get a lot of the easy questions correct. So around the midway mark, you'll get a couple of really difficult questions which you may not have any idea on how to solve. It can be from geometry or PNC, for example, and you may not have any idea on how to solve them. So I would suggest, don't waste any time on it because you get around 2 minutes per question. And coming from that background, you'll have that feel that I can solve this. If you give me just 4 5 minutes, I can solve it. But you'll be eating away time from the rest of the questions, and you're going to get the easy questions wrong after that. So if you get, once the time you set aside time for each question, set aside maybe 3 minutes for a difficult question. Once the time is up, you have to skip and move on. Next, talking about verbal, this is one of the sections that most of us are going to face difficulty in. So there are basically three parts to the verbal. That is the sentence correction, reading comprehension, and the critical reasoning section. You'll have less than a minute to answer each question in the verbal section. So when it comes to sentence correction, right, this is actually one of the most easiest parts of the verbal section because you'll be learning a set of rules and a lot of grammar beforehand, and you have to basically know how to apply all of that in the exam. So all you have to do is prepare a lot of questions. So practice a lot of questions and have an error log. This is going to apply for for quant and the other two sections of verbal as well. Prepare an error log. So basically have an Excel sheet where you list down which guide you took that question from and what was the exact mistake you made. And it's not only about noting down the mistake, but also revising the mistake you made on a regular basis, because that is when you remember what mistake you made and you ensure that you do not make the same mistake again. So maintaining an error log is absolutely essential. Just practicing questions and you practice thousands of questions is not going to help you unless you know where exactly you're going. Another thing about the verbal is that you'll rarely, very, very rarely find repetitive questions. So when you go for the GMAT exam, all the questions are going to be extremely new to you. So when you understand why you're making a particular mistake, right, you're not going to make that mistake in the exam. Because since you're going to get very new questions, you have to understand the concepts behind it to solve those questions correctly. So sentence correction is fairly straightforward compared to the other two. Now for reading comprehension, you have to have a set strategy in mind as to how you want to go about it. Because you have less than a minute per question. You have to solve the sentence correction questions in under 45 seconds, max a minute. And you will be able to do that as well. But the reading comprehension section is going to take time. You have to read through the entire passage and then answer questions based on it. And the options are not going to be straightforward. You're going to feel like almost 2 to 3 options are going to be right, but it's up to you to understand what exactly is being conveyed. You're not going to choose. You're not supposed to choose what answer is right. You're supposed to choose what is matching with what is given in the passage or what the author is trying to convey through the passage. And for that, you have to have extreme clarity on what they're asking in the question and what the author is trying to convey in the passage. So this is only going to come by having a set structure in mind as to how you want to go through the reading comprehension section. So the first one of the methods that I followed was to basically spend 3 to 4 minutes on just understanding the paragraphs, understanding 3 to 4 paragraphs completely to ensure what the author is trying to say, what are the different facts, and what is the tone of the passage. So by understanding that, you'll have a clear idea on what exactly the questions are going to ask, what the questions are asking from you, and you'll be having a clear idea on which option to select. So this again will vary. The strategy depends on you, but this is one strategy that I followed, which I felt was fairly comprehensive in terms of understanding the passage and selecting the most appropriate answer for that particular question. And finally, critical reasoning. This is one of the most logical sections. It's not going to be mechanical, where again you have to have a set strategy in mind. So there are different types of critical reasoning questions. So you first identify which type of question has come, and have a strategy on how you're going to approach it. Again, you have to really understand what the author is trying to convey through that question and what exactly is asked from you in the particular question. So this is again very logical, and again it's very important to have that error log maintained for all the three sections in verbal. And it's essential to revise the error log on a regular basis. Otherwise, you're not going to learn. If you're going to practice many questions and not keep revising your mistakes, you're just going to go on an endless spree because there are so many questions available. You can go on for a year without stopping. But it's essential to just stick to the plan, stick to a structure, and keep repeating keep going through the dialogue to ensure that you're not repeating any of the mistakes you've made before, because that is essential. You should not repeat any error you made before, and that you get by understanding the concepts with clarity and having a set structure for each of the sections on how you're going to approach it. Now for the GMAT, as I mentioned, there are two other sections, the AWA and the IR. These are not very essential. You don't have to score extremely great because most of the colleges don't look at these scores. But try to ensure that it's not very low as well, because that will bring in some issues when you're applying to the colleges. There's a set template to follow for the essay writing, which is available on GMAT Club, which is going to be one of your gods if you're going to write the GMAT. So there's a set template available there, and if you follow the template, you'll easily be able to score a 6 out of a 6 on the AWA. And the IR is, you don't have to prepare for it at all. Considering we're coming from engineering backgrounds, it's basically logical reasoning questions. You don't need any general knowledge. You just have to solve and reason what is given on the screen at that time, and you'll be able to get a 6 or a 7 or even an 8 out of an 8. Yeah, so spend a lot of time on quant and verbal. Again, the order of the section, since it was asked previously, you can get to decide the order you want to choose for the GMAT. So you can go any section first. Again, I'd go with I went with verbal first because I personally felt that I needed that 100% concentration for that entire 65-minute duration in verbal, and there was no opportunity for me to slack off there. So I wanted to give the verbal first, and then one second. I'd not suggest going for the AWA or IR first, because they're just going to eat up your brain power and it's not going to add any value. So I went to the verbal first and the quant second. I'd say, choose a particular order and stick to that strategy during your entire prep. So on the MBA.com website, there are, mock tests available, which is going to give you a feel of how the GMAT exam is going to be. Again, there's absolutely very less chance of the questions repeating, but it's just going to give you a feel of how the exam is going to be. So once you have the structure in mind, once you're sure of your order, you can go and practice exams on MBA.com, and that will give you an idea of how the exam is going to be and give you a bit of a confidence boost before you give your exam. Right. So that is about the GMAT exam. Next is about the prep, right? So the deadlines for the colleges are generally in October, starting in October. So I suggest you give your first GMAT attempt at least 1.5 months. The best case scenario would be to give it 3 months before the first attempt. So I would recommend around 3 to 4 months of preparation time. I took 3 months of preparation before my first attempt, but to be on the safer side, for example, you start in March, April, May, June. You'd be able to give your first attempt in June. right? Now that will give you sufficient time for your second attempt. Now this is not essential, right? You don't have to give your second attempt. If you do amazing in your first attempt, well and good. You have a lot of time now to prepare the applications in terms of the essays. But a lot of times, what I personally also had the same experience. The first attempt, you're going to face a lot of questions that are unknown to you, and you're going to, even though you practice a lot on time management, you're going to slip a bit on that first attempt. So always keep time for the second attempt. I personally did not do that. I gave my first attempt in August and my second attempt in the mid of October, which I feel is very late. So do not do that. Or if you want, you can give your first attempt in August and your second attempt maybe by the last week of September or first week of October before the deadlines. But ensure that after the first attempt, you are starting the application process as well in terms of the essays recommendations, which I'll go through in detail. After the first attempt, do not only focus on GMAT again. You have to start with the other process, because I 100% recommend that everyone apply only in round one to these colleges, because the MIM program is getting extremely competitive now. And that is one of the mistakes I feel I made personally. I applied in round two and round three for these colleges, which is, it's not going to have a huge effect, but it does make a difference, especially when you're coming from a very common background, which is an engineer from India. So, have that particular time frame in mind when you're applying to these colleges. Yeah, and that's about the GMAT. So next, once the GMAT is out of the way, or even during the GMAT process, you can create your list of colleges. Now, your initial selection of colleges can be based on ranking. So you maybe you're shortlisting 10 colleges that you want to apply to, or 5 colleges that you want to apply to. You can maybe look at ranking, but do not only go by that. After you made the list of colleges that you want to apply to, do not select a college based only on ranking, because the rankings available online vary according to different factors like international experience you get, diversity, things like that, which may not be as relevant to you. So do not only go by rankings. Um, so after you narrow down your colleges to 5 or 10, right? Always ensure that you're dividing the colleges. So it has to be divided into dream, achievable, and safe, in my opinion. And that is what I did as well. So if you're having 5 colleges, you can go for like a 2-2-1 or a 1-3, 1-3-1, up to you. It's totally up to you. But it's always good to have a safe college in case you do not get your dream or achievable colleges. So the dream college is basically going to be the college which is far fetched, but what you really want to get into the program, and you have a chance of getting into it. Achievable one is basically which you're fairly confident with a 70% chance of getting into. And safe one is the college which you're extremely confident in. This doesn't mean that it is a bad college. It is still a college shortlisted by you based on your preferences, but it is safer than the other colleges that you're applying to. And it's always important to have that safe college as the not as a backup, but as the opportunity in case the others fail. Um, Next is do not go only by rankings, as I mentioned. So you have to look at the various other things that the college offers, like the curriculum, career prospects, international exposure, research centers, the professors. Like all of these are going to play a massive role in your experience, right? The rankings are not going to help you once you join the college, right? So you have to look at what are the job prospects, how strong the alumni network is, the curriculum. So suppose you want to pursue a particular specialization, say finance, for example, you have to look at whether the college has the specialization you're looking for, whether the college is known for finance or are they known for consulting, things like that, based on your profile and your goals. So your goals have to basically achieve with the college's goals and what the college is going to offer, right? And that's why the colleges look for the right fit. They don't look at your entire profile, but are you going to be a right fit for their college, right? And you have to look for the same. So do not only go by rankings. And once you create a list of the colleges and your GMAT is done, based on your GMAT score and your profile, you can start the applications to the particular colleges. Now, when it comes to the application, right, this is going to be one of the most important parts in terms of your essay, right? Um, so when you're looking at your profile, it's very, very important to start working on it very early, right? Internships are absolutely a must, I would say. Having that work experience shows that, you've gone out of your way to explore that field, learn new skills, pick up new skills, and get that corporate exposure, which colleges value a lot. And it also adds as a talking point during your interviews as to, suppose you say that I want to they ask why you want to do the MIM, you have a talking point as to I did this internship and I learned something from there. So internships are extremely crucial, and try to have at least 2 to 3 internships in your profile, and have ensure that it's meaningful. You know, for example, if you don't get a huge brand name on your profile, it's fine, but ensure that the work you do at the internship is meaningful. Do not fake anything. Do not do anything of that sort. Next, clubs. So most of you will already be in clubs. Try to take up leadership positions. Try to be as active as possible, because things like leadership positions at clubs and involvement at clubs adds as a talking point when you're writing your essays, and these are things that can be mentioned during your interview as well. And social work, this is extremely crucial. Things like 180D CNITK, the UN Millennium Fellowship, or just volunteering is going to add a huge value to your profile. Now talking about the essays, right? So the essays, the most crucial aspect of the applications. You can say that my GPA is low, but you can still get into a good college. But if your essays are bad, they're straight up going to reject you. They're not going to think twice. So the main thing in the essays is going to be to identify ways to make yourself stand out. What is making you differentiate yourself from the crowd, right? So the essays are mainly going to revolve around things like why you want to join the school, why you want to do the MIM program, what are your goals, future goals, things like describing yourself in situational questions like what are your challenges, what are some of the challenges you face, what are your weaknesses and strengths, describe your leadership abilities, things like that, right? So having generic content is absolutely useless here. You have to ensure that every point you mention, every story that you create in your essays is making you stand out from the rest, because as I mentioned, right, the MIM is getting extremely competitive, and there is, writing essays on how hard the JEE mains was, or writing essays on issues you faced at clubs, generic issues which almost everyone faces, is going to make your essay very bland. So the goal of the essay is to ensure that you've created an impression in the mind of the evaluator, right? So ensure that you're portraying an extremely good story through your essays, and have no generic content at all, and have clarity in terms of why this college, why this course, and your future goals, right? Now, when it comes to the MIM, right, do not do it just because everyone is doing it. You have to ensure that you're doing the MIM because it's going to match or align with your future goals. That is it is only in that case when you're going to be as authentic as possible in terms of why you want to do the MIM, right? Faking it won't work here. And have extreme clarity on why this college. So you have to spend a day on just researching about the course offered at the college. What are the various opportunities in terms of clubs, internships, etc. offered at the college? You have to know a lot about the professors who are going to teach the courses, the exact curriculum, electives, learn each and everything possible through the about the college. And this can be done by just visiting their website. They have extremely comprehensive details on or the courses on their website. So spend a lot of time doing that, and have extreme clarity about that in your applications. Not be general. Suppose you want to talk about your future goals. Do not say I want to work in consulting. That is not going to work. You have to be as specific as possible, which field you want to work in, which you can even mention I want to work in this company in this wing, right? That's everything. You have to be as specific as possible. Next is your resume. This is going to be fairly straightforward. A lot of you would have been preparing your resumes for internships and placements. Again, do not add irrelevant content. Tailor it to the college. Ensure that all the all the work you've done are in actionable points, and mention the skills and the qualities that you've gained by doing the internships or clubs. And yeah, this is the general stuff when it comes to your resume. Finally, is the recommendation letters. So the recommendation letters are extremely crucial. But depending on the college, you need around one or two, but all of the colleges I apply to wanted two recommendation letters. You know, if you want a recommendation letter from a particular professor, try to build that rapport and try to build that relationship as early as possible. Go a few months before and speak to them about this. Let them know about what you've done in college, what your goals are, things like that. Set up a session with them and give them clarity on what exactly you want to do, so that when they are writing your recommendation, they have some content to fill in, right? And the recommendations given by professors are extremely crucial, because it gives them it gives the college a view on how you were in your undergrad. And I mean, it's obviously extremely important on to ensure that you are doing a good job when you go to their college as well. Go as early as possible to get their approval on the recommendation letters. Ensure that the recommendations are submitted much before the deadline. Go to their cabins, give them constant reminders that the recommendation is due, and yeah, try to get it submitted as early as possible. Because the professors, especially if you're not very close to them, are going to find ways to delay it, because they have a lot of important stuff on their hands as well. So try to push them a lot and identify the right professors who are going to implement or include whatever you say in the recommendation letters. Do not go to professors just for the name. If they're not going to say good things about you, there's absolutely no point in getting the recommendation. So go to professors who will actually help you and who are willing to give you a good recommendation. So that's about the applications. Next is the interviews. This is the final stage. So if your application is through, they liked your essays, they'll call you for the interviews. The first thing is have confidence, have clarity, sit up straight, dress well, and have clarity in terms of each and every word you have mentioned in your resume and the applications, essays as well. Do not talk about anything you have no idea of. Okay. Have the answers ready to the general questions, right? But do not be mechanical. Again, fairly common for most of the interview processes. But questions like situational questions, questions, describe yourself, tell me about the challenges faced, describe your leadership abilities, why MIM, why this college, are going to be asked. Almost a guarantee that they're going to be asked in the interview. So have answers ready, but do not be mechanical. Do not read off a screen. Try to be as authentic as possible during the interview. Next, drive the interview to your strengths. Right. So the interview process is going to be more of a conversation here. When especially for all the interviews I had, it was more of a conversation. They're not going to sit and grill you. So talk about your strengths, right? So, for example, I am really interested in the field of sustainability. I want to work in strategy and consulting, and I'm interested in that field, which is what I revolve my applications around. Now, when you mention sustainability, right, or when you mention anything, finance, marketing, their job is to cross question you. They're going to cross question each and every word that you mentioned in your application and every word you mentioned in the interview. So if you're going to mention something, ensure you have the facts to back it up. You've done ensure that you've done your research. You understand what the current industry trends are. So there are a lot of questions will be around what the industry's trends are currently, what is going on in that company, which company do you want to work in, how are you going to add value to that company, what impact are you going to create. So impact is a very strong word that is used now, and you have to know in detail about what exactly you're going to do after the MIM. So this is extremely essential, and you have to do your thorough research before it. Do not mention anything you have no idea about. If you do not have any idea about investment banking, don't say, "Oh yeah, maybe I want to get into investment banking." That's going to create a huge problem for you, because they are going to cross question you. They're not going to leave anything aside, right? And you do not want to give them any reasons to reject you, right? So their job in the interview is to find reasons to reject you. Do not give them any reason to do that. And finally, be as authentic as possible. Do not bluff. Do not mention, extravagant stories in your applications. Do not fake internships. Do not fake any club work. Do not do anything of that sort, because the adcom has a lot of experience when it comes to interviews, and they will easily be able to catch or find out when you bluff, because when they cross question you, when they go into detail, you may not be able to give the perfect answer that they're looking for, or that is something that is relevant, right? So at that time, it just derails your entire chance of securing an admission at the college, right? So you can move on, please. Right. Next, now that was a very comprehensive detail on my journey. Next, I'll be a bit quick on why abroad versus India and why did I choose France. Right, abroad versus India, completely personal choice. There is no right, there is no wrong. There are a few advantages to abroad, few advantages to India, but on a personal level, I felt I've always had the aim of moving abroad and settling there and working there. So I did not even consider giving the cat or even looking at Indian colleges, but it's an extremely personal choice. There is no right or wrong when it comes to abroad versus India. Now, when you talk about MIM abroad, right, you have to look at the Europe and the US basically. So, as I mentioned, right, the MIM has its roots in the Europe, and it's more well established there compared to the US. For example, the Grand École MIM program that I'm going to join at ESSEC Business School is one of the oldest MIM programs there is. And these are offered by schools like HEC Paris, ESCP, and ESSEC. And knowing that you're joining one of the most like a reputed course, which and they have that the school has the training and they've undergone that and the students have undergone the training for so many years is always good to know at the back of your mind. And next is the tuition fee. The tuition fee, especially when you don't get scholarships in the Europe versus the US, there's a huge difference in that. It's almost 1.5, 1.7x times in the US. And the course duration for the compared to the tuition fee is very small. For example, the tuition fee is 1.5x and the course duration is only 1 year. Whereas MIM in the Europe is generally around 2 years. It again that's dependent on you, right? But looking from a fresher's perspective, you always want that opportunity to have a longer course so that you can explore the various domains, have the opportunity to settle down in that country, etc. Right? Now, why France? Again, extremely personal, extreme. It's totally up to you. So when I eliminated US from my options, I was basically looking at countries like Italy, Spain, France, UK, right? Now, again, if you do not want to learn a new language, you do not want to explore a different culture, you want to play it safe, UK is an amazing option. But personally, I wanted to, explore a different culture, learn French, and just basically incorporate that into my personality to have that, kind of that holistic development, which is one of the reasons I chose France. And Europe, and France in particular, is well established when it comes to the field of sustainability, as I mentioned, a field I want to work in. Next is international exposure and diversity, one of the most important things. So, international exposure in terms of the internships you can get abroad or the exchange programs are extremely important, and these are offered by most of the MIM programs, and the diversity as well, right? If you look at international exposure and diversity, and mainly talk about why I chose abroad over India. Next is the internship and job opportunities, extremely essential. One of the main reasons why you're going to do the MIM program. So look at the opportunities available in the country, right? For example, the US is going to be harder to get the H-1B visa, whereas in France, for example, you have 2 years after you complete your course to find a job, and you have to just renew your work visa once in every 4 years. And I've after speaking to a few seniors and doing my research, I found that the most difficult part is getting the job, being qualified for the job, right? In terms of your attributes, the work visa is not going to be that much of an issue. This absolutely does not mean that if you go to France you're going to get an internship, right? No, but you have multiple possibilities, right? There's so many companies in different sectors. There's sectors like consulting, finance. France is known for luxury, food, healthcare. There's so many sectors available, and then multiple companies, multiple startups that you can apply to. So having a huge range of startups and companies to apply to basically improves your probability of getting in, right? So always look at the job and internship opportunities, how easy it is to get your work visa after you're done studying, what is the period you have to get your work visa, things like that when choosing a country. And I felt that France was a perfect match for me because it gave me the time and it gives me the opportunities as well. Yeah, next slide, please. Finally, I want to talk about ESSEC, why I chose ESSEC. So I did not get admits from INSEAD and HEC. I got an admit in ESSAD and ESSEC. So I basically chose ESSEC because first, it's a 2-year course. As I mentioned, right, coming from a background with no experience in management, I wanted the time first to basically settle down in France, learn the culture, learn the language, right? Next is the opportunity to choose as many electives as possible, explore as many fields as possible. Although I mentioned that I have an interest in strategy and management and consulting and sustainability, basically, that is, I still want to have the opportunity to explore the various fields by taking electives and specializations before I lock down my path. That's why I decided that the 2-year course was the perfect fit for me. Next is talking about the curriculum. The curriculum at ESSEC Business School is one of the most extremely flexible curriculums you'll find when it comes to the MIM. Flexible in terms of things like there are only 9 core courses that everyone has to do. That is to basically get your foundation straight, right? Which is one of the main reasons why people do MIM to get your foundation straight. Other than that, you have your own world of domains to choose from. It can be in the field of operations, marketing, strategy, finance, accounting. You can choose. There are over 200 electives that are offered, and you can basically choose anything that you want that will align with your goals. That'll help you design your own path to find internship and job opportunities in that domain. Next is the chairs and the tracks. So chair is basically a work contract between you, the college, and a company. So you have the opportunity to work with the company as well as study certain concepts with the college. And I mean, we're talking about practical experience, right? Doesn't get much better than that, right? So there are chairs like the luxury chairs at ESSEC. There are chairs like the luxury chair offered by LVMH. There's the business analytics chair with Accenture, right? So there are opportunities like that. Tracks are basically specializations in a particular domain. So if you want to specialize in operations, if you want to specialize in finance, you can choose a particular track and you'll only be studying that, right? So this amount of flexibility was one of the main reasons why I chose ESSEC. Next is the internships and apprenticeships. So the amount of internship opportunities available when it comes to startups or even big companies in the different sectors that I mentioned is a lot. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, especially for a person like me with no work experience. It's going to be a challenge, but having those opportunities is always a good thing to have. Next is the apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship, I'm pretty sure, is common to France, and it's only offered by a few schools. It's not offered by schools like INSEAD and HEC, but ESSEC offers the apprenticeship. This is basically like an internship, but you'll be signing a contract for 1 or 2 years with the company, and the company, when you sign that contract, you'll be working for 2 years, and the company will pay your entire tuition fee and give you a monthly stipend as well. So if you land an apprenticeship, you'll basically have the opportunity to be debt free while studying the course, and you can do internships and apprenticeships while studying the course as well, right? So it gives you the opportunity to be debt free, have no burden of loans, no dependency on your parents during the college itself, which is, I mean, an extremely huge advantage when it comes to ESSEC, because not a lot of colleges offer the apprenticeship programs. And the internships, as I mentioned, the internships and apprenticeships can be done during the course, and you're expected to have at least 12 months of international work experience by the time you graduate. So the 2 year course generally becomes 3.5 years because you're working for a bit in the middle. But I mean, that's a huge added advantage to you having that work experience when you apply for jobs later. So the internships and apprenticeships are a huge advantage. And finally, the exchange programs, the opportunity to go to a different continent, understand their culture and heritage, and to be part of some of the top business schools. Like ESSEC, for example, has exchange programs with Rotman School of Management in Canada, in Toronto, Canada. Um, they have a program with UC Berkeley. They have a program with NUS as well. So you can choose particular fields that you, for example, you can choose marketing and go to Rotman and do a specialization for a few months and come back. And then you can also choose the particular specializations and go to the college of your preference, and that is a separate process you have to apply for. But this also gives you an added advantage of having that college on your CV and having that experience of learning that particular specialization in one of the most reputed colleges in the world. So exchange programs are a huge advantage. One thing is that you cannot go. ESSEC has a tie-up with IMA, but you cannot go there because they require you to have international experience, and as an Indian, you will not qualify for that because you'd be going back to India. But there are so many colleges in the US, Canada, UK, Australia that you can go to and pursue your exchange program. Yeah, so because a culmination of all of these reasons is why I chose ESSEC finally. Yeah, so that was basically my experience with what the MIM is, why I chose ESSEC, and yeah, and I'm open for a few questions now, if there are any.
Sharaka, are there any questions in the chat box? Okay, I don't think so. There are any questions.
Yeah, questions. Okay, so I would like to conclude. I'd like to thank both Rohan and Kuhu for taking your time and effort to attend this session and for sharing those valuable tips and techniques. We hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
guys.